Hi, I'm Chad, and you're watching Squarebody Stuff. Now we're trying to move right along with this 339 project. Last video, we got the cam bearings in, and now we're going to work on file fitting the rings. Now when I ordered these pistons and rings from DSS Racing, they sent me oversized rings that way I could file fit them to my specifications. And those of you who may have not heard of DSS Racing pistons, the company is out of Illinois. They do all of their forgings, everything in-house. They have a great product. They made me a great deal on these pistons. Now the pistons I'm using are their FX Series 4032 forgings. Nice little flat top pistons. And these things are really high quality. They had 339 stroker pistons on the shelf ready to go for 6-inch rod. That was odd for me to actually find some in stock ready to go. And they set me up with their XP series rings, their Power Adder series rings. The top ring is a gas nitrated. The second ring is the Napier ring. The rings are the thin rings, the 1.2 millimeter for the top and second ring, and a 3 millimeter oil control ring package. Also, with the pin boss going into the skirt like that, or going into the ringland, it has to have these little spacers that go in there too. Like I said earlier, they sent me rings that are oversized. They're actually for 3/800 bore, and I'm running a 3.796 bore. So with that, I've got plenty of room to file fit these exactly where I need them, or close to where I need them. And I say close because sometimes file fitting rings, you can be off just a little bit, but I would rather have maybe an extra thousandth of gap than not enough gap, especially a nitrous or boosted application. And since we're going to be running some nitrous to this thing, I got to make sure I have plenty of gap. Now here's the instructions and what they suggest for setting your gap. Depends on what you're running. Of course, I'm going to be putting a lot of nitrous to this. I don't know exactly how much yet, but at least a 250 shot. So what we're going to try to do is go with as much gap as possible just to be on the safe side. So they suggest 8 thousandths of gap per inch of bore for the top ring. Second ring, 8.5 thousandths, and then the minimum for the oil ring rails is 15 thousandths. So I've got to go through all of these rings and make sure they're within my specs. So I went ahead and done the math and figured out what I need, where I need to be, and I wrote that down on my sheet that I'm documenting everything on. Now for the top ring, I want no less than 31 thousandths. The second ring, I want no less than 33 thousandths. Of course, 15 thousandths for the oil ring, or just maybe a little bit more. And to file fit rings, I mean, you can use a regular flat file clamped in a vise and do it that way. I've done that before, but it's better if you get a little tool like this, a little file ring or ring filer. This is one of the cheaper ones from Summit Racing. It works pretty good. It's a lot better than a file or trying to do it by hand. They have some really nice ones you can upgrade to if you're into that. But for right now, this little dude works pretty good for me. I had a lot to take out of these rings to get them where I wanted them. I've already gone through and done the even side and got them all gapped. Starting out, the top ring I think was like 14 thousandths. I think same thing for the second ring. They were real close, is where I started out at. The oil rings, they were around 10 thousandths, I believe. I had to take them out quite a bit too to make sure that they worked. And took a little bit off of this expander ring just to make sure it doesn't get too bunched up in there. File fitting rings is not a hard process. It's just time consuming. But it is one of those things that is necessary to do, especially more horsepower you're trying to put out, or if you're doing any type of power adders, you really need to pay close attention to your ring gap. About all you're going to need to do this is a set of feeler gauges. You'll need something to push the rings down into the bore and square them up. And I just use one of the pistons and put a ring in in the oil groove, and that pushes it down into the bore far enough where you can get a good measurement, and also something to file your rings. Another thing I use is just an emery board, fingernail file, whatever you want to call it. I use this to dress up the ends. Once I get them fit, or while I'm fitting them, every time I file on them, I take that little corner, I knock it down just a little bit so I don't score up the cylinders. But then once I get them fit and they're where they're supposed to be, I'll take the file or this emery board and go around the edges, make sure there's no sharp edges, make everything smooth. Now it really doesn't matter which ring you start out with. I usually just go through and I'll do like all the second rings for every hole, or whatever process works better for you. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you keep everything in order with the respective cylinders. Stick it down in there. Take your piston with the ring on it. Nice and gently shove it down in there. And now your ring is squared up, ready to measure. Let's get a close-up view of that. Keep your ring started in there. Take your piston. And now you're all squared up, ready to measure. I'm going to start with the 13,000th. And it doesn't quite fit all the way in there, so we're probably around 12. That's fine. Don't really need to know exactly where you're starting out at, unless you have a fancy filer that is adjustable to take out so many thousandths at a time. I don't have that. Now to use this, you get your file up against those stops, and they're tapered this way to kind of keep the ring stuck down. You want to make sure you keep everything square. You don't want to be off too much one way or the other. You need to keep it square and put pressure on it, squeeze on it, because you want to take material from both sides and keep it square. I guess you could hook a drill up to this, take this handle, hook a drill up. Might be faster. I kind of like to do it by hand so you can get a feel of it. And if you know exactly how much you need to take out, is, you know, if you get to practicing with it and say you need 10, 20 cranks to get you close. I've already lost track of where I'm at, and I can't remember what the ones were for the other side. I was thinking close to 20 or so to get started with. That's all it takes. I'm not really sure if you're only supposed to go one direction. I tried to go both directions, at least on the top and second rings, to kind of get a little bit of a crosshatch. It takes a little bit of material off. Now with the real thin oil rings, it works best if you go, I would call it backwards, going clockwise. Now before I stick this ring back down in the hole, while I'm filing on these just to get them to the right size, I'll take this emery board, fingernail file, whatever you want to call it, and I'll hit these corners right here just so I don't scratch up the cylinder wall. And then after I get done with it, I'll go around and clean up everything. But for right now, I'm just worried about hitting these corners just a little bit so I don't have because it'll have a fine burr and it will scratch your cylinder walls. Now let's set it back down on the board and see where we're at. We're almost 18. We still got quite a ways to go. We took about 5 thousandths out, maybe a little bit more. Like I said, it's a pretty tedious and slow process. You got to take your time. If you're worried about it, a little extra gap is better than too little gap. Worst thing that's going to happen, you're going to lose just a tiny bit of compression and have a little bit of blow by. But if you're running a power adder, you'll be less likely to have any issues with your rings butting up. Now, I guess I should mention or explain what I'm talking about when the rings, why we need so much gap for a ring with power adders. As the rings heat up, they grow, and as they grow, it will swell up, or the gap will tighten up. What will happen is they'll get so tight that that ring will buckle or bend, or try to push it into itself, and it doesn't have anywhere to go. It's got to go somewhere. So it starts sticking to the cylinder walls, or it starts spreading the piston, the ring land out. It'll pop the top of a piston off or bust a ring land off. It causes all sorts of problems. So the more gap you have, the better off you'll be, up to a point. Now, you don't want a 1/4 inch gap in there, obviously. You're going to just burn through the oil. But if you end up doing one, which I have one that I went a little bit too far on a second ring. I just got carried away cranking that thing, but we're only talking 1/1000th more than the other rings. So it's not a big deal. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Probably won't notice any difference. But so far, this is what I've got on the odd or the even cylinders: 32, 33, and 15 on all of them, except for this one. This second ring is I got a little bit carried away, but it's, like I said, it's only 1/1000th more than the other ones. So we should be good. It'll be one step closer to getting this thing running. The next video, I will be setting the crankshaft in here and hopefully getting it buttoned in here for the last time. I'm gonna go ahead and work through all these, finish this all up, get it all documented, and probably just end the video off here. That way you guys don't have to be suffering through another time lapse with some cheesy YouTube music. But you guys might enjoy that. I don't know. I kind of do in some ways. The main reason I do that is if I just jump from one thing to the other, you guys don't actually get to see kind of the process. Now, yeah, it is fast forwarded, but you can still kind of see the process. You can always slow it down. You can slow down the video if you really want to see what I'm doing. But even doing a time lapse, you can kind of see what I'm doing, and I want to educate you guys. So that's why I do the time lapses with the cheesy music. But anyways, I'm gonna end this off. I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Yeah, and stay tuned for more. That's all I got. I got a little sinus stuff going on, so my brain's a little fuzzy. So until next time, y'all keep your square bodies rolling. We'll catch you later.